Hello, everyone. My brother taught me this trick. He's a primary school teacher. I've gone off my script already, but anyway, he's a primary school teacher. He said, if you want to get people to be quiet, you just stop talking and look at them. Eventually, the room goes quiet fairly quick. You're all really, really welcome, but I'm going to firstly hand you over to Sinead Fahey, one of the KCAT Studio artists who wants to tell you a few things.
First of all, on behalf of KCAT, we would like to thank you all for coming such a long distance, and especially for supporting KCAT down through the years. And I was also, on behalf of myself and Dominic, we would like you all to take a few minutes silence just to remember those who passed away in KCAT. And also, on behalf of myself and Dominic, we would like to ask you all if you can make sure your mobiles are all switched off before the whole show starts. Now I am actually going to hand you all over to Dominic again. Thank you very much.
You're all very, very welcome, and we've decided not to use a microphone this evening because it's quite hard to pass it back and forth when you're having a conversation, but if anyone is really struggling with the volume, and you need us to use it, we'll see how we go as we go on. We can try that. But I wanted to, first of all, welcome you, and thank you, Sinead, for doing that. And I wanted to particularly welcome our panelists, and I'm going to introduce you to them now and tell you a little bit about them. We're going to be discussing curation and inclusion in the visual arts, and it's really good to know the depth of experience and knowledge that our panelists have. So first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sinead Fahey, who was a late and very welcome addition to the panel. And the first thing I noticed when I read Sinead's biog is she's shown in an awful lot more places than I have. She's had an awful lot more shows.
I've been all over Ireland. I'm after being in Holland, Belgium, Luxembourg, Japan, Leeds. I'm after being in St. Luke's and Kilkenny, and I'm after being in Waterford Regional Hospital.
Sinead's work is also in the collection of the Arts Council of Ireland, and it's in several publications, including the Engagement Project publication, which is really, really worth checking out. Her own retrospective catalogue from 2017, and also in the current publication for this wonderful show that we're going to open this evening. So the next person I want to introduce you to is Brianna Hurley. Brianna joined the studio in 2018. She's also exhibited widely, including at the Crawford Gallery, including at Visual Carlow, and the West Cork Art Centre. She's developed an extraordinary, unique body of painting work, some of which you'll also see in this show. And actually, one of the works which we might talk about in a second is right behind you. Brianna has work in the Irish National Collection at the Crawford Gallery, Cork. So Brianna Hurley, you're welcome. And then I'm going to introduce you to Benjamin Stafford, who is the curator of visual art at Visual Carlow, which is one of the most extraordinary art spaces in the country. I would suggest one of the most challenging to curate a show in, because it's so vast. But the shows are beautiful when they're there. And Ben has also curated this wonderful exhibition we're going to see tonight. He has previously also worked at the Arts Council of Ireland, IMA, at the Kevin Kavanagh Gallery, and he holds an MA in Art Research and Collaboration from IADT. Welcome, Ben. And then finally, but certainly not least, I could spend, we have 40 minutes here, 45 minutes, okay? I could spend that whole 45 minutes going through Catherine Marshall's biography, and her contribution to the arts in Ireland is really quite extraordinary. She's a curator, an art historian, has been an educator in third level, the founding head of collections at the Irish Museum of Modern Art, and curated many, many important exhibitions in Ireland and internationally, and edited and authored many important publications, including the 5th volume of Art and Architecture of Ireland. She was the recipient of the first honorary doctorate in the history of art from UCD, and is currently involved in the amazing, and I'm going to try and get the pronunciation right, in the amazing group called Na Cailleach, who have a website and really, really worth checking out, all about inclusion in many, many ways. And so welcome, Catherine Marshall. And so the way I thought we'd do today is I'm going to go through and ask the panelists 1 or 2 questions. And after maybe halfway through or after a little while, we might open up to the floor. But we want to get a sense, we're kind of very aware, there are people here who know what curation is and have thought about it, and there are people who are maybe not so sure what curation is. There are people who have thought a lot about inclusion, and there are people who maybe haven't thought so much about inclusion. And so we're going to try and approach this in a way that meets everyone where they're at. So bear with us when we try and do that. And so the first person I want to ask is Brianna. I want to ask Brianna, can you tell us a little bit about your work? Maybe you could tell us about this wonderful painting that's behind.
Yeah. So the painting behind is a painting of a new story that I'm doing called The Tornadic People. People with tornado powers. And the painting, like the way I paint and all my work. I've created a world that's like Earth but better, kind of like a reddish soil planet, like with beautiful trees, and of course I get my inspiration from my travels and my love for basketball, and I get my inspiration from weather, of course, because I like tornadoes and I paint tornadoes. And I also
Can I ask you something? I see you with your basketball in the picture. Who are the people around you?
So the tornado people, their names are Jada, Brianna, Awena, Lorena. That's the 4 of us.
That's okay, yeah.
So that story on the tornado people is based on Oklahoma and Madrid. So it's about these 2 empires that they're against each other for a while, but then they kind of like they become friends in the end. And the 4 of us, tornadic people, we try to save the world. It's good people and bad people that have tornado powers, like superheroes.
Thank you. Thank you. I wonder, could you tell us as well a little bit about the KCAT Studio?
Of course. I think currently now we have 14 artists, and we had 21, I think. And we also, the art studio is a wonderful place to be that has professional artists on a professional level. Which is we get to create our paintings, sculptures, you name it, all different paintings. And there's a facilitator there that only to help you if you need paper or advice or canvases or all that kind of jazz. Also, what else? The studio is a very lovely place to be. There's lovely people. Yeah. And very lovely atmosphere.
And how many days a week are you in the studio?
3 days a week.
3 days a week. And is that from morning to the evening?
It's from 9 o'clock until 3 for me, but it officially finishes at 4. But we can kind of come and go because we're professional artists.
There you have it. Thank you. Could I ask you, Sinead? Could I ask you a little bit about your work? And Ben and I were looking at one of your paintings earlier, the one you've just, I think, in the process of finishing, with lots of beautiful coloured birds and plants and so on. Could you tell us a little bit about any of your work, really?
Or the facade outside.
The front.
The big picture of Declan on the wall outside.
The front of the building, I started it off with pencil, and then I used acrylic markers on the paper, but then I gave over the paper to Declan Kennedy, I think it was, and then he gave it to the designers, and then they just went ahead with it. So, and then the designers came back and said, Sinead, that was really, really incredible what you could do for KCAT this year. That's all I can remember.
That's great.
That's all I can remember.
Maybe just say it's a portrait of Declan Kennedy.
It's actually a project of Declan Kennedy, wherever he is in the building.
He doesn't like his name put out front, that fella, so we're going to leave him. Thanks, Sinead. Thanks a million. How many days a week are you in the studio?
I'm actually here Tuesday and Friday for the moment.
Tuesday and Friday. And you're a studio member, I'm reading here, since 2001. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So thanks for that. Ben, I might ask you, you've curated this show that is going to be open this evening. And you might tell us a little bit about that process of curation, but maybe also how you ended up in KCAT, why it interests you, because of many places we can work, right? Mm-hmm. And so why is it interesting to work here?
I suppose it's uniquely rewarding, I think, to work here, because as you and I were saying earlier, there's a diversity of practice, but also quite a unique form of support and holistic, reciprocal interaction between the artists and the facilitators and the kind of guest artists and facilitators who come in here. And for me, KCAT embodies an ideal of what a studio can be, but it also, with all the attendant kind of challenges and difficulties that it can take to get to this point. But more than just a studio, I think what it embodies for me is a way of looking at and experiencing and making art that is increasingly difficult to find. That is to say, experiencing art totally removed from the market. Maybe that's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, it's obviously great to sell work, but and also somewhat removed from trends or overarching curatorial ideas, and it's more connected, I think, to art making for the sake of it. That's not to say that it's naive or that it's uninformed by art history or other practices, but rather that it is motivated only by itself, if that makes sense.
And so, well, I get the sense there's an urgency about making work here, which is kind of extraordinary. I understand that bit all right. You might tell us about the process of curation, because I suppose people who maybe aren't involved in exhibitions, I'm guilty of this sometimes. I walk into a show and I presume someone just picked up the picture and put it on the wall, you know, but it's been a long process.
I had a bit of a panic attack in the storeroom here. I don't know if anyone's been into it, but there's a lot in there. And this being the 25th anniversary show, you know, we all agreed that it was important and apt that all the artists from the history of KCAT would be included. And I suppose because of the longevity of the supports here, that's actually surprisingly not as many people as you might think. Like Sinead, when people come, they tend to stay for a long time, which is amazing to have that level of security. So I think I'm right in thinking there's about 20 or 21 artists in total in the show. And I suppose the process for me was motivated in two ways. First of all, representing everyone's practice and trying to find stuff that was kind of emblematic of their work, you know, from like generally big bodies of work, picking just one or two pieces, but then also trying to draw connections between individual artists, because, you know, obviously working in close proximity to each other, any artist in any studio will influence each other, intentionally or not, but also what I found is that people have really distinct ways of working here. So in this room and in the other room, there are works are put together in a way that kind of highlight an affinity in practice or in subject matter between different artists. Like you might see it over there, for example, on the wall with those two paintings. That's Margaret Walker on the left and Diana Chambers on the right. And I was interested in their treatment of animals and their treatment of plant life and the kind of perspective that they've both employed, and I thought they went together. And so there's examples of things like that kind of throughout the show, or like maybe in that corner over there, Thomas Barron and Margaret Walker again, kind of looking at the kind of interesting affinity between what seems like purely abstract and then somewhat figurative work together.
And this one here then, I think it's Eileen Mulrooney's.
It is Eileen Mulrooney, and that's paired with another one of Diana's, and you can see treatment of kind of streetscape. So those were my two motivations.
You're looking at how work kind of vibrates together but is distinct at the same time, yeah. Okay. Yeah. How long did it take to hang everything? How long were you?
3 days, three and a half days. So it was me and Morris, who works here, and then we had a great technician called Laura O'Toole work with us. So yeah, it was kind of 1.5 days for each room.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
And Catherine, I might ask you a question. I was quite interested in the engagement project, and one thing that struck me when I worked here for 2.5, maybe 3 years, and one of the things I realised very quickly was the connection that many of the artists here have within the wider art world, a professional art world maybe is the thing to say, pivots on your connection with KCAT and your capacity to connect people and make things happen and so on. And the engagement project maybe is an exemplary of that, and I wondered if you could tell people about that, because it's curation that steps outside a single show and starts going into artist relationships, and we spoke earlier about audience relationships and so on, and different parts of the country. And that sounds like a statement rather than a question, but I'm sorry, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about the engagement project and how long it went on for and what was involved and maybe some of the motivation.
Okay, thanks Dominic. The engagement project was a project where we quite deliberately set out to team up an artist in the studio with an artist from the wider mainstream world of artists practicing in Ireland. And And by the way, thank you for all your kind words about me, but it wasn't just me. I was asked to do that. It wasn't my idea, although I suppose it grew out of things we'd been doing in a piecemeal sort of way before that. But I was specifically asked by Declan Kennedy and Paul Boxslag in about 2012 or 13. I know we started in 2013, although all the records of it will probably say 2014 because we didn't achieve much in the first year. But the idea was to try and do whatever we could do to create some kind of long-lasting relationships between artists from the mainstream outside of the studios and artists within the studios. So we weren't quite sure what was the most inclusive way to go about this. So the word inclusion is all over this, really. The first thing we did was we held an open day, and a few people came. So a few very good people came, but they came, and because we weren't quite sure yet what to do with them all, we had them in a group like this, and we talked to each other. The invited artists talked to the artists in the studios. We maybe had one or two people, curators like myself, say a few things about how we thought this might go. And then everybody went home and had their tea, and we didn't know where to go next. But then we decided to sort of crank it up a little bit, and the following, maybe a few months later during the Kilkenny Arts Festival, during Bealtaine, I'm also involved with Age and Opportunity and the Bealtaine Arts Festivals all over the country. But we brought some women artists to Kilkenny for Bealtaine. And when we were there, we thought, we can't waste this opportunity of having a bunch of those people who we knew would be useful to us. So we held another open day here, but this time it was only for those artists who were already involved with Bealtaine in the county, and they had come from all over the place. So they came, and we had a much more meaningful interaction. And so out of that came a couple of our first pairings. And I suppose then there's also, you get a hint from the artists. So Mary Cody, who's sitting right here in front of me. Hi, Mary, it's great to see you back. Mary saw an exhibition. The other thing that KCAT does really well is it brings this. Do you want to say something else, Mary?
I don't know.
I'm going back to when you started working with Paul.
That's right, yeah.
You went with, I think Declan brought a little group of you to an exhibition that Paul had in the Butler Gallery.
Yeah.
And Paul Moss's work, for any of you who knows it, it started off as painting, but then it became stuff that grew outward. He started nailing things onto the paintings, hanging things off the nails. It started to grow. My word for it is it sort of festers outward. But anyway, Mary had a look at that, and then she came back to the studio here and immediately decided that she wanted to do something with yarn, coloured yarn and paint. So she started, wrapping yarn around her canvases and painting over it and allowing the paint to nearly hold the yarn on. It became so thick. Fantastic work, Mary, and there's some of it over in the other room. Is there one right here behind us?
There's one over there.
So there is. There is indeed, yeah, great one on the wall down there. But it was that question of, I suppose what Paul saw, or what Mary saw in Paul's work, was that things didn't have to stay on a canvas. They could spill off it. They could go wherever they wanted to go. And so the first manifestation of the KCAT engagement project was work in progress, we called it. And it was just Mary and Paul, and it was in visual in Carlow. But that's hardly ever, people forget that was engagement, but it was the engagement project. And then the next year was the Kilkenny Arts Festival. We put a show on in an old garden centre shop in Kilkenny. And by then we had assembled quite a few artists. So Dominic, I think you were already on board then as an artist, working with Fergus. Nevin Lahart, who's not here, was doing great stuff with, of course, Andrew Pike.
Jean Conway.
Jean Conroy, you were with you, Sinead, and there were a whole series of people. We had a really great exhibition going then. Molly Douthit, the American painter who was here as an artist in residence in Callan at the time. And she actually was writing to you, Fergus, if I remember. She moved away from Callan, but they kept a correspondence going. And even, you know, sometimes it was those kind of relationships. It wasn't necessarily the two people who were working alongside of each other, but they were sharing their thoughts about making art even. Molly came here from North Dakota, and she was as homesick as it's possible to be until she came into KCAT, and the smell of the paint and the chance to drop in at coffee time and talk to the guys about what they were doing kept her going. It was more about that spurring people on to keep working and to stay with it. She was very young, only in her early 20s, and lost. And so there were people like Fergus here to help her to just feel welcomed and keep going. So the engagement project worked in direct relationships between influence from artist to artist, or relationships between the people. And then as we got bigger and got more, by the way, Dominic mentioned time. We were funded from the Arts Council for 3 years. But actually, we were really only getting into our stride then. So we persuaded the Arts Council to give us another 3. And I don't know whether we contained it within that 6 years, probably not. No, because it ran on to 2020, I think, in the end. But COVID also got in the way and delayed it. And anyway, that really was the way the engagement program went. But we realised that we also needed to make relationships with audiences, and that we could do that best sometimes by going for target audiences, and at other times by just spreading the net wide open and inviting everybody. So we did a mixture of those things. We held a symposium in order to maybe put some of the ideas that were coming out of all of this together, and to start. This was in 2018, when we should have been coming to the end, but we weren't. We were, as I said, we were really getting into full throttle then, and we brought people like Francois Matarasso from England, or you know, we brought a range of people, and Andrew Pike, who never can be held in one spot or kept down, referred to all of us as mentors and tormentors. But you know, we had a really great sharing session where we could deconstruct the tormenting process. So I think, in a way, the engagement process was all about that. It was all about, I think, sharing every aspect of how we brought people together. When they came together, how they worked together. They came for days at a time. Some of them had stayed in the studios. At other times, Margaret Walker went up to Sligo to Anna Spearman's studio. Declan Byrne went to Belfast to Alistair MacLennan's studio. You know, there was just great toing and froing. Alistair MacLennan came down here, and now Callan is, you know, his home from home outside of Belfast, you know. But they were more about all the human relationships as well as the strictly professional art relationships. And of course, what's that a mirror of? It's a mirror of how all of us as professional artists or curators work in our lives wherever we are outside of KCAT. So it was making sure that KCAT then became, if you like, a kind of seedbed for all of that to happen in and out of KCAT as well. And just to be really transparency and openness about everything that went on was a very important part of all of that. So when by the end of 2020 we had our homecoming, let's celebrate it all by bringing it back here to KCAT, there were still 2 artists, relative newcomers to the studio, who didn't have partner artists. They were included in the engagement project anyway. One of them was Brianna, and another one was Fintan, whom I'm about to work with again in a month's time, I'm delighted to say. But what was good about Fintan and Brianna was they didn't want to be rushed into having some kind of partnership just so that they fitted under that heading. They were just here. They were engaged with KCAT and the wider, that wider, if you like, nearly spiritual reach of KCAT and the art community. So it was entirely appropriate that they were there, not as part of some kind of engagement, pairing. We called it the courtship, and the courtship became the engagement. As somebody said, the next thing is the divorce, but I don't think that's happened yet. And I'm delighted to say that the artists still keep in touch with each other. Paul Moss wanted to be here tonight, but couldn't be. Anna Spearman would love to be back. Haven't been talking to Alistair, but you know, Dominic is here. Those engagements continue, and I hope we'll continue to do so. So I don't know, that was a longer answer than you wanted.
No, that's wonderful, and it was an extraordinary project. I think a very, very important project. And language is such a problem. It's going around my head. I have something I kind of thought about that I don't know how to say, and it's often that way with language, whether we're talking about disability or inclusion or the art world. What do we actually mean by any of them? And sometimes, for example, with a term like inclusion, and there is a question here somewhere, okay, with a term like inclusion, it's good sometimes to spread the word out and you know, see where it goes to, and it's good sometimes to hone it in. And if we hone it in on the KCAT Studio, what we're talking about really when we talk about inclusion is something other than participation in art. Because there's lots of projects that get called inclusion, and rightly so, and they're wonderful. Someone might show up to a once-off art initiative or project, and it's fantastic. Someone may go to an art project and participate once a week, once a month, and it could be social, it could be about well-being, it could be for many reasons, and it's fantastic. What we're talking about here is something as well as that, perhaps, which is the prolonged, sustained development of self-directed, ambitious work, which is what every professional, serious artist aspires to. And I'm still looking for my question, not a statement. I'm not used to chairing these things. I'm better at giving answers. So, yes, please.
Maybe that's what I and Catherine, and in fact maybe all of us, you're doing the ideal job of the chair and you're reflecting our answers back at us. But maybe what you're alluding to is what I had in mind, and I was thinking about the kind of reciprocity or the relationships that form within the studio. No, I don't have it.
But it is that, but it's more, it's also outside the studio, it's the professional art environment. And you said something in the essay for your book, it's a really interesting essay about institutional reckoning with what people are included or not included, and what voices and what stories are included and not. And I'm wondering that about curation. It goes back to my initial question, the motivation for a show like this. Is there a sense of responsibility involved? And should there be a sense from the professional art environment? And Catherine rightly said the Arts Council funded, you know, the engagement project for many years, and doors have opened in many ways because of such work. But I'm interested in the responsibility, not just of KCAT to step out, but from the rest of the professional art sphere to step in, you know.
There's something I'd love to add, if I may. Sorry, Ben. I think, you know, when Patrick Lydon was founding what came to be known as KCAT here, I think he always had, I sense that right from the beginning, he thought it's really important to create the right environment to nurture and enable really seriously professionally minded people. Like Georgie McCutcheon was the person he had particularly in mind, but Andrew and Lorna, the people who were here from the very beginning. But he realised always that art doesn't happen in a vacuum, even it doesn't just happen in a studio, it happens in communities. So this is where we come back to inclusion. Patrick had a vision for Callan that was bigger than only KCAT, but KCAT was the centre of that vision for Callan. And so the arts were really at the centre of the vision for Callan. And so when Ben mentioned earlier on, it was lovely to work here with artists for whom the commercial side of art making is not the first consideration, or even the second or the third, but and it is important, let's not play it down. Everybody needs to make a living, but there's a higher, bigger picture. And it is about being an artist, creating, doing it in the right environment for you, with the right time to do it. Nobody rushed anything at KCAT. And then it's about the community that KCAT sucks in around it and reaches out to.
But at the same time, I think it's very important not to be tokenistic in the sense that, you know, people are here and part of the studio in the first instance because they're great artists or because they have the potential for their work to develop into great art. And if I think like a model, I can only speak from my own way of working, but say Brianna had some excellent work in a group show in visual, when was that? Like two summers ago.
Yeah.
And you were paired with a great Donegal and Dublin-based artist called Sinead Kennedy, and the only curatorial rationale in my mind for that was that the work spoke to each other, the artists spoke to each other through their work, and it made a compelling exhibition. And that, to me, I think is an important component of inclusion, is that it is, you know, if you're going to be truly democratic and equal in terms of opportunity, then it has to be motivated by a recognition that the work is good, not in any terms of sort of siloing it off.
Thanks, Sinead. I have plenty, thank you. I'm also interested in that, thanks for that, interested in that term, professionally minded. And so with that, I might ask you a question, Brianna. When the likes of us, when Catherine, I should say it better than that, when Catherine and Ben and myself and people like us turn up here, what do you want from us? Where do you want your work to be? What ambition do you have for your work?
Well, I hope for the future to become an international artist and a famous artist, because I think the more people that know my art, it would be an honour to get my art out there and just like get the art out there, and for more people to see, maybe in the Louvre or the Reina Sofia Museum or wherever they want to put the art. I think would be a great opportunity, and it's good to have opportunities falling in to my pocket, I should say.
If someone mentioned money wasn't an issue, I'm not sure at all. I'm joking. Oh, you didn't mean the money?
No,
okay,
just
okay.
like tricks.
Ah, yeah, okay. Yeah, money as well. And Sinead, I might ask you the same question, which was, where would you like to see your work? Where would you like it to be that it hasn't been already?
Well, I would like to try and make a nice design for, if I'm allowed with the staff and the students, I'd like to try and make something up for the workhouse. I was thinking of the workhouse above.
Okay. So we're all, like all artists, we're all looking for different audiences and different ways of showing work, and different possibilities for it. And I might try and open up to the floor a bit here if I can. I'm conscious of time. We've 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And I had two conflicting thoughts. I kept thinking about sustainability when Catherine and then Brianna and Sinead were talking. And there is something about us in the arts where we never think we've done enough. We never think we've done enough. It's always about what else? What's over there? It's a big question. What? Now what? Now what? Now what? And I don't know, is that an insecurity? Is it about financial insecurity? There you go. That's your answer, yeah. So it could be about having to reprove yourself all the time financially. It could be about that. It could be about the idea that art is vocational, and so there is an ethic of constantly trying to expand the spectrum of what it is we do and how it's understood. But again, I don't know where the question is here, but I suppose maybe it is, where do we go from here? Because I think it's important KCAT realise you've arrived somewhere. KCAT Studio is extraordinary. And KCAT is extraordinary. And you've arrived to this extraordinary, extraordinary place. And it deserves to pause, I think, and realise that. While that question of now what goes on in the back of the mind, and how do we do this, and what do we do now, and how do we keep reproving ourselves? Jesus, I thought I had a question. Maybe that's it. And I'll open to the panel and open to the floor. If anyone has any question they'd like to ask, if anyone has a thought or an idea, and the studio artists included particularly, but anybody, maybe you'd like to respond to that thing of where do we go from here?
Please don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, there you go. So anybody at all, yeah.
I know God, but I think the main thing in the studio we work together and we do our own thing and so
if I understand you rightly, you just asked me for a loan of €50. Yeah. No, if I I couldn't help it. So I think if I understand you rightly, you're saying one of the important things of the studio is that you get to do your own work in your own way. Yeah.
And that basically is a home to me. I know behind you, they will all go back. What you're going to do? I don't know. But I said, Untitled, you can tell your own story.
I think Andrew is referring to the fact that, like an idiot, I picked the only painting he seemed to have that doesn't have a title. So this work behind Catherine over here, Dorothy and I the other day were desperately asking Andrew to title it, and he asked us for suggestions. Every single one I made, he dismissed.
We're tormentors.
Yeah.
That's your job.
You turn the tables.
I remember what a couple of friends, Jim, artists, came down and came to visit and they were shocked. They came to me and asked me, "Do these handicapped people print this?" I said, "Yes." Oh, I don't care.
So can I ask then, what do you think about, like, do you want to be known as an artist with a disability? Do you want to be known as an artist, or
Just
what?
an artist, but
Just an artist.
I hate the word outside art.
You hate the word outside. Did you say you hate the word outside art?
Outside art.
Okay.
I'm not an outside artist. I'm an outside street.
Okay.
I feel this is important. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? We have some time if anyone has anything they'd like to say.
I'd like to ask the other studio artists who are here, not here, to stand up, just so we see you. Andrew, but Andrew, you don't have to stand up, you know, you're other studio artists.
And we have Mary Cody
They're in front of you,
and
John.
Andrew.
People who've done a course here in KCAT, whether as artists or in the theatre course, anyone who's done a course here in KCAT, could they stand up, please?
And you wasn't bored.
There we are. And my third question, those three questions. Anybody who's bought a work from KCAT stand up?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fintan.
Today's something. I'm also a member of the Studio Architect. I was in the studio 25 years. And I could be independent artist, like as a group of that. But this show is really good. Achieved. So I think of the point is to develop in KCAT was to be first the exhibition we had in the Mermaid. Me and Dominic working on that. I mean, just already. Then I had other exhibition coming up in September that me and Catherine we working on that to September. And I'm understood artist in KCAT because in November it's very important for studio artists to have comes together. Remember, it's all about independent art and also that I was a member of the T-shirt company as well in the past.
And so if I understand right, thank you for that. If I understand, so you're kind of I'm just going to summarize, if that's okay, a little bit, in case people didn't hear, that it's important to be a member of the group, the KCAT Studio group, but it's very important for you to have your individual shows and your individual practice and your self-directed practice.
Yeah, other thing is not a member. So I sold really good painting in Bray. And I could sell something in Chica half price. So I would say to take here next to Brianna, I hit the opening the exhibition at 8 o'clock. And we showed people the art added to this exhibition. Because when exhibition, when you sell a painting, and that goes to the arts, a very technique by work.
So when you sell a painting, you sell a painting, that the money goes to the artist. If that's what.
Just for KCAT,
and to KCAT. Okay. Is it important to sell?
You are disproving my assertion that you guys are existing outside of the market. But it's all right.
Okay, thank you for that. Shane. I'd love to hear about Equinox, and a contribution from an Equinox member would be brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think across the board, everyone. Sorry?
No, go ahead.
What is this? Yeah, I think it goes to everyone. Everyone under the same roof.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Brilliant. And brilliant Equinox.
I I think we actually have another show across the way.
That's right. Well, you know what? You're dead right. You're pulling me up on time now because I'm supposed to finish now. And it's now 7:30, and we're going to finish now in 1 second. And then at 8 o'clock, which will be in about a half an hour, then we're going to open both shows. So thanks for that reminder, because I'd let it go on. That's great. So something I should have done, folks, at the start, which I told Melissa I would do, and I completely forgot, was to say something about KCAT. And it just escaped me. KCAT Art Centre, and it's a good reminder when you remind just the amount of things happen here. KCAT Art Centre is a multidisciplinary art centre which has been supporting inclusive art practices in Callan for 25 years. It has a permanent studio space for 14 visual artists, a theatre company, Equinox, visual art courses, and shared open studio space for the community. At KCAT, a majority of artists identify with having a disability, but KCAT's approach has been to consistently support artists regardless of their background, age, gender, art experience or ability, and has been a place where people of all abilities and intersecting identities create alongside one another. So thank you. And unless anyone has any pressing questions or anything pressing to stay, yeah. Please. How are you?
Just a little horizon picture. Because I was here right at the beginning, when there was still a meat mixing machine in the corner there. In fact, the pumps are still there. And we were threatened by flood waters from the river, and work started in this room. So it's been a long time. And I now come to a point in my own life where I'm looking back enormously at what's gone on, because it was such an inspiration to come here and to see it thrive and work and to see the different assets like Equinox. My question to the panel is, what are the challenges you see now in the future coming towards us?
So what are the challenges?
What are the challenges that you personally feel can be, if you start to see perhaps on that horizon that's in front of us, that we have looked back quite a bit, but just to know.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to have that as our last question. I'm going to give maybe just a couple of minutes for it. Thank you. If anyone would like to answer that, what do you see? What are the challenges, you think?
I wouldn't mind just making one point in relation to your question, and that is, we're talking about art, curation and inclusion. You can be so inclusive that you become, it's very bland, and we don't want blandness, we want quality. So I think all the time we remember that art is it's at its best when it is about the individual and individual importance, the importance of the individual. And of course that happens on an hourly basis here in KCAT with all of the studio artists and indeed with the people who are supporting the studio artists. But I think more than ever now, because I think the big challenge ahead of all of us is artificial intelligence. And if ever there was a tool for blandness, that's it. And so I think actually the challenge for all of us is to just assert the importance of the arts, because the arts are, I think, the single but hugely most powerful weapon to hold up against it. So I don't know how everybody else would feel about that, but I'm fairly passionate about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Brianna?
Suppose my biggest challenge or fear, I guess, is that, how do I put this in the right words? What I love about KCAT is that there's mainstream and us together in the one building, and it's a mainstream kind of atmosphere that I love. But my biggest fear is losing that.
Yeah, and it is, that's really well said, actually. And it goes back to that point about sustainability, and that constant threat of having to reprove.
Regulation.
Yeah. But I think maybe, folks, I will leave. There's many things that could be talked about. Sorry, Fergus. Yeah, would you like to say something?
I just want to mention that in May and June, I had a retrospective in East Scorpio. We was in Sirius in Cloud, and I have a book to up the occasion.
Actually, that's really good, because thank you for that reminder. Actually, to say to people, when we open the show here later, and over in the Powerhouse Gallery, that all the KCAT retrospective catalogues are there, and previous publications, including Fergus's publication from his amazing retrospective at the Serious Arts Centre in Cove this year. As I say, there are many things could be said about the role of facilitation, about language. There's so much we could cover that we just can't in the time we had. But I think we did a really good conversation, and I maybe we could finish just in advance of our opening in 25 minutes. We could finish maybe just by giving each other a round of applause just for being here. And thank you very much.